Turn up the music, Phillies and Gentlecolts. We can officially say that MLP has been kicked off for 2018. I know that it's not Season 8 of Friendship is Magic, but I'm a fan of Equestria Girl, so this will do just nicely as a way to end that hiatus. We did have those shorts to watch over the break, and while I did like a good majority of them, they're definitely not up to par as even those 22-minute specials from last summer, let alone an entire 44-minute special. From the moment this special was announced, and I found out it was based off a well-received Equestria Girls novel, I was definitely intrigued and looked forward to it. Ever since Rainbow Rocks, Sunset Shimmer has been my favorite part of Equestria Girls. Her development from a one-dimensional villain to a great friend, mentor, and defender of her new world from Rogue Equestrian Magic today is astounding, and a special dedicated to her is a treat for any fans of this series. Plus, this special was written by the writer that wrote some of my favorite recent episodes of the main show. But does a special where her memory has been erased from the minds of her friends live up to the hype from fans of the novel, Sunset herself, and who the main writer is? Well, Forgotten Friendship was an excellent way to drop the green flag on MLP for 2018 and, in my opinion, is Sunset's best outing since Rainbow Rocks. Now, something I liked in particular about this special was it put Sunset in a very vulnerable position. In the previous film, starting with Rainbow Rocks, she had the help of her Canterlot High friends along with Princess Twilight to come up with a solution to deter a magical threat to their world. Plus, her knowledge of equestrian magic and history also gave her more of a benefit to conquer said threats. But in Forgotten Friendship, she had to solve a problem that blindsided her with almost no clues left over to look at, which meant no knowledge of Equestria or its magic could help her. And the problem itself directly affected her by having all of her growth and friendships with her Canterlot High friends being erased from her friends' minds, leaving her all alone, frightened, and like I said, vulnerable to fix this before she'd be forgotten forever, even if she really wasn't alone for too long. Effectively, Sunset's at square zero, and I loved seeing her work harder than we've ever seen her before to get her friends back. She had to work her butt off to find answers, and I loved how she had to do it by facing some tough choices. Speaking of those tough choices, one of them was something I've been waiting for since Sunset began her reformation. The moment she returned to Equestria to see Princess Twilight, I was holding my breath in hopes she would finally meet up with Celestia for the first time since she abandoned her former mentor. Honestly, their reunion was just about everything I wanted it to be, and it was touching yet simple and adorable. I didn't want it to be overly emotional and sappy with tears or have Celestia act harshly towards Sunset and demand why she should offer any guidance to her since Sunset had forsaken it years before. Sunset apologizing and proving that she's a changed pony is really all I wanted from her. Celestia walking over and raising Sunset's chin, hugging her in response and acknowledging how much she's changed for the better was perfect. Yes, Celestia was intimidating at first, but that's all she needed to do to have Sunset prove she's a changed pony. The other tough decision Sunset had to make was teaming up with Trixie to find the Memory Stone and who was wielding it. Trixie wasn't really a villain, just more of a nuisance to the Rainbooms and Rainbow Rocks, but it was clear Sunset wasn't too eager to become friends with Trixie at all. But I liked that even though Trixie had no idea that Sunset was supposed to be nice, she actually felt sympathetic towards her and understood her situation of having an idea of what she's supposed to be, but no one at school knows it. It kind of adds a little bit of a layer to at least the human Trixie by showing a reason for why she acts egotistical and always refers to herself with her third-person moniker. Trixie has to try her best to show that she's serious about being a magician or an illusionist to get everyone's attention, it's just that no one has been convinced yet. Although I have to admit I adored how she went right back to her egotistical self after the little tender moment with Sunset and demanded that she be placed as the greatest and powerfulest student in the yearbook. I did like this angle of Trixie helping Sunset, though it kind of reminds me of Han Solo helping Luke Skywalker by being in it for the personal gain in A New Hope. Now, in a special that was rife with emotions, there was a ton of great gags and jokes littered throughout to keep the special from being too dramatic and sappy. There's really too many to count, but I can tell you without a doubt that Celestia screwing with Sunset and Twilight was my favorite. Just the inflection of her voice and that look she gave them sold the joke. And from what Sunset told Twilight, apparently Celestia didn't used to have a sense of humor before, which tells me she developed one shortly after Sunset abandoned her as a way to cope with it. Anyway, I also loved that short bit where Trixie and Sunset went to Maud for help on finding the Memory Stone, but Maud goes off on a tangent on the actual rock so much that Trixie and Sunset just back away slowly. Give that girl an excuse to talk about rocks and she'll lecture an empty room. Speaking of Trixie and jokes, I was in awe that she legitimately started teleporting near the end. Of course, not being able to make a proper exit or teleport herself and Sunset simultaneously was hilarious, but just thinking that the Equestria Girl's Trixie can teleport with no magic and cheap smoke bombs, but her unicorn counterpart struggles with it is the funniest part. And then there's Twilight in the library. All I can say is, welcome back, nerdy, adorkable Twilight.
Don't take this away from me! I've always been good to you, library!
As for Wallflower, well, I've got a lot to say. First off, I just want to say that the writers made it way too obvious that she was going to be the villain. Her picking up the yearbook with that suspicious camera angle, Sunset shutting off the lights on her when everyone left the yearbook room, and her whole attitude in general during that scene just immediately sent off the villain signals for me. I can understand if other fans or kids wouldn't pick up on it right away, but for me, it was too obvious. I applaud the writers for trying to make it seem like Trixie could be the culprit and making her into a red herring, but they really should have utilized that invisible aspect of Wallflower's character that she even made a whole song about later on. Just imagine if they had her make subtle appearances around the school, like in the yearbook room or during the opening song, maybe even have her on the beach somewhere in the background as possible clues. It would be exactly like Starlight hiding in the background of some Season 5 episodes. I'm not saying they have to mimic Fight Club or The Sixth Sense per se, but the whole twist with Wallflower being the villain was a pretty weak one. Subtlety goes a long way. But other than that, I really enjoyed Wallflower's role as the villain. Concerning her, the writers toyed with villain tropes a lot in this special, and it definitely turned out great. Instead of having the magic of the stone corrupt her and then overpower and transform her into a powerful foe, Wallflower was just a normal teenage girl that happened to have all sorts of problems. Everything that happened with the stone was of her own accord, even being the reason why no one remembered her because she abused its magic for personal gain. I liked that her actions had consequences which made her invisible to everyone. Speaking of which, I did also like her song about being invisible, even though she stopped halfway through because Sunset tried to get to the stone, which made another good meta joke about songs. However, I have to say that the attention to detail during Wallflower's song was exquisite. If you notice, right before Sunset notices the backpack is unattended and tries to slink over to get the stone, you can actually see the recording light on Sci-Twi's drone blinking. However, there's one problem I have with the stone itself. It was never explained why Clover the Clever buried the stone with instructions on how to use it. It's kind of like the Egyptians mummifying Imhotep and the mummy with a curse that would make him an unstoppable killing machine. Just why would you give the possibility of something going wrong a push? The only thing I can think of is Clover was in such a haste to bury the stone and hide it from the sorceress that the instructions was all he had to give it an extra layer of security. I guess you can just chalk that up to a bit of lazy writing, but we'll have to see if that's explained in the extra 6 minutes that were cut from the special. But I do have to say, it was honestly refreshing to see the Humane 7 suit up to take on just magic alone instead of someone that's been corrupted by equestrian magic into an evil force. Plus, during that fight to get Sunset's memories of Canterlot High and her friends back, I adored that Pinky cut off Sci-Twi's monologue about friendship and even had a kick-ass line to top it off.
But it is nothing compared to the magic of— Yeah, we get it! Light her up, lady!
Sunset's sacrifice, on the other hand, was nearly heart-wrenching, but it was necessary to show her friends that she wasn't the manipulative bully they remembered her to be. I mean, damn, the memories of all her progress, development, and her friends from Equestria Girls 1 to now being forcibly ripped from her mind, especially her pleading for Twilight to remember her, was tough to see. Not as bad as, say, Luke Skywalker being zapped with Force lightning, but still awful to sit through. And then add Sunset's frightened voice when she tried to get up and not recognizing anything, begging Celestia for help and being freaked out over her human body. Man, that tugged a bit at my heartstrings. I loved how in Equestria Girls 1 and then Mirror Magic, both Twilight and Starlight tried walking as if they were still ponies, but seeing Sunset on all fours trying to stand like a pony was just saddening. Thankfully, it worked to have her friends stand up to Wallflower and use their magic to restore everything, but still, it doesn't change how disheartening it was to see how frightened Sunset was. As for the moral, well, it's pretty self-explanatory, but I still liked it. Sunset had made so much progress since being reformed, but she could still learn to be a little nicer to those outside of her group of friends. Essentially, you can be a nice person to your friends, but unknowingly be dismissive to others. However, I think there's a far more interesting moral lurking in the background, kind of like how Wallflower should have been at the beginning of the special. Sure, there are bad memories I'd love to remove, like Dale Earnhardt's death, but it's not healthy. Horrific memories are a different subject altogether, and I'm definitely not referring to those, but you have to face bad memories like a fight with a friend or doing something stupid or embarrassing eventually. Bad memories are lessons for us to make us better people, to help shape who we are. Wallflower admitting she removed awkward hellos or saying the wrong thing is what made her invisible. She eventually erased how to be social instead of taking what made those bad memories as lessons on how to do it better the next time. To make a long story short, replacing bad memories or simply trying to force yourself to forget them will only hurt you in the long run. Well, that's about all I have to say. Forgotten Friendship was such a treat to watch, and I'm shocked that 6 minutes were actually cut from this special because it certainly flows well together. Yeah, there are some things that could have been improved on, but compared to what Sunset had to work through with the help of Princess Twilight and Human Trixie, the little development Human Trixie got, Sunset reuniting and making amends with Celestia, the refreshing take on MLP villain tropes, the emotions that this special gave us, and the hilarious jokes and gags littered throughout, they're really not that big of a deal to me. Sunset even learning that she still has some progress to make in friendship still leaves her as one of the most interesting characters MLP has ever produced. I definitely recommend this special to anyone, even people who aren't too keen on Equestria Girls. As a fantastic way to kick off 2018 for MLP, I have to give Forgotten Friendship a green flag rating, and I hope we get a Blu-ray release with a writer's cut of this special. But what did you think of Forgotten Friendship? I'm Mr. Left Turn. I'll see you when I get back from the track.